Good morning. If everybody could please take their seats, we are ready to begin Laguna Niguel's Veterans Day ceremony on this 100th anniversary of Veterans Day. To begin our ceremony, Boy Scout Troop 772 will present the flags, followed by Cadet Girl Scout Katie Schaefer from Troop 2544 singing the national anthem, and then Dennis Mulvaney, Vice Commander of American Legion Post 281 and a Laguna Niguel Military Support Committee member, will lead us in the moment of silence. Scouts?
Group attention. Audience attention. Color guard, advance the colors. Color guard, prepare to post the colors. Those in uniform, please salute. Those not in uniform, please place your right hand over your heart. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color guard, post the colors. Color guard, regroup. Audience at ease.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Color guard dismissed. Audience at ease.
Oops. Audience, please stand. Please stand and join me in a moment of silence for all the men and women who have sacrificed their lives to give us our nation's freedom. Thank you. You may be seated.
In Laguna Niguel, it is our honor to celebrate this day, to share the stories of our veterans. And we are especially thankful for all of those who have come today, all of you who are joining us, to our veterans who are here who will be recognized individually later in the program. But we'd like to first acknowledge some of the electeds who are here today. And from the city of Laguna Niguel, we have Mayor John Mark Jennings. Mayor Pro Tem Lori Davies. And Lori is also co-chair of the Laguna Niguel Military Support Committee. We have City Council Member Fred Minigar, City Council Member Sandy Raines, City Manager Tammy Letourneau, and Deputy City Manager Justin Martin. From the South Orange County Community College District, we have Trustee Marcia Milchiker. And Moulton Niguel Water District Director Bill Moorhead. And Director Kelly Jennings. Representing Congressman Ruta's office, District Director Laura Oatman. And representing Orange County Board of Supervisors, Chairwoman Lisa Bartlett, Sergio Prince. And I'd like to ask all of the members of the Laguna Niguel Military Support Committee, the American Legion Post, and the American Legion Auxiliary to please rise. And now to welcome you to the remarkable city of Laguna Niguel, our mayor, John Mark Jennings.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you who are visiting us from out of town, welcome to Laguna Niguel. And for those of you who are from Laguna Niguel, welcome home. This is a very, very special day for us. It's one that we take pause every year and set aside specifically to remember our veterans. I was struck this morning in thinking about this that, we all sort of celebrate Veterans Day in our own way. I grew up in a city where Eisenhower was born. So when you have a 5-star and a president from your hometown, it's one of those things where you always hear about. Veterans Day has always been a big deal for me. We also have another hometown guy that I grew up knowing about. His name was Hartley Edwards. Not a name that you probably recognize, but Hartley Edwards joined the military back in, I think it was August of 1918. That date becomes important in just a moment. In 1918, Hartley Edwards joined General Pershing, at the time the commander-in-chief of the European forces. He joined his Pershing zone. He wanted to form a bugle corps, so they formed a drum and bugle corps, and Hartley Edwards, who had never picked up a bugle in his life, joined Pershing zone in August of 1918. Well, 3 months later, in November of 1918, he was the chief bugler, and General Pershing called to Hartley Edwards and said, "I want you to come play the bugle." And so on the 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month, Hartley Edwards played the bugle. He played taps and closed out World War I. That was Armistice Day. Now, flash forward to 1976, Hartley Edwards passed away after a very, very long life. And my father, who had been a bugler his whole life, played taps for Hartley's service. So to tell you that Veterans Day means something, it means a lot to our family. It's a big deal. In fact, my dad, who's now 86 years old, spends most of his days, in fact, some days there's not one, but most days there are. He plays taps at all the military funeral services all over the part of the country where they live. And so it means a big deal. We celebrate this day after day in our family. And so it is in Laguna Niguel. Laguna Niguel, while we take pause on one day, anybody that knows anything about our city knows that we always take pause for our veterans. We give them reserved parking. We have military support committees. As far as I know, we're the only city in Southern California that has 3 adopted military battalions. We take this stuff seriously because somebody took it seriously for us. And it is such a pleasure to be the mayor of a city that understands that and has a chance to give thanks to all of you all who did so much for our freedoms. On behalf of a very, very grateful city, I say thank you indeed. I also wanted to say thank you to our special guest today because we are military folk. I have a military challenge coin. This is the city's 30th anniversary. And I wanted to say thank you by sharing a challenge coin with our special guest. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your service. Thank you. And for the history of Armistice Day, we have a special treat. We've invited Boy Scout Troop 772, and the Scouts will be here, and they are going to give us everything that we need to know about Armistice Day, which we now call Veterans Day. Thank you very much.
Veterans Day is a U.S. legal holiday dedicated to American veterans of all wars. 99 years ago, in 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, an armistice, or temporary end of fighting, was declared between the Allied nations and Germany in World War I, which at the time was called the Great War. The Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919, marking the official end of World War I. Still, the armistice date of November 11, 1918, was remembered as a date that marked the end of the conflict, because that was when the bloodshed stopped.
1 year later, in November 1919, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed November 11 as the first commemoration of Armistice Day. The day's observation included parades and public gatherings, as well as brief pause in business and school activities at 11 a.m. On November 11, 1921, an unidentified American soldier killed in the war was buried at Arlington National Cemetery near Washington, D.C. On the same day the previous year, unidentified soldiers were laid to rest at Westminster Abbey in London and at the Arc de Triomphe.
On June 4th, 1926, Congress passed a resolution that the recruiting anniversary of November 11th, 1918 should be commemorated with Thanksgiving prayer and exercises designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and mutual understanding between nations, and that the president should issue an annual proclamation calling for the observance of Armistice Day.
By that time, 27 state legislators had made November 11th a legal holiday. An act approved May 13th, 1938 made November 11th a legal federal holiday, dedicated to the cause of world peace and hereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day.
American effort during World War II saw the great mobilization of U.S. Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force in the nation's history. More than 16 million people and nearly 6 million more served in the Korean War.
In 1954, after lobbying efforts by veterans service organizations, the 83rd U.S. Congress amended the 1938 Act that had made Armistice Day a holiday, striking the word armistice in favor of veterans. President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the legislation on June 1st, 1954. From then on, November 11th became a day to honor American veterans of all wars.
A century ago today, American forces were still battling against vast numbers of enemies in the First World War. Alive with us today are veterans of the Second World War, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, the Gulf Wars, and the War on Terror.
In Laguna Niguel, we observe Veterans Day as a tribute to our citizens that have stepped up to defend our nation and its way of life by serving in the armed forces of the United States of America. Please help us as the Boy Scouts to carry forward this tradition and salute them today. Thank you.
Thank you, Troop 772. Well, now it's the part of the program why you all came. We're going to hear some fascinating history, and it's a history that needs to be kept alive. We have a very special guest speaker today, and that is Ted Tanner. Ted Tanner was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Air Force. He is now retired. And I'm not going to tell you too much because I'm going to let Ted tell his story. But what I'd like to draw attention to is the fact that he has served our country for over 30 years. 5 years active duty, 25 years reserve duty. But that's not quite true, because Ted continues to serve his country by being a member of the Freedom Committee and going out and talking to our school children and sharing the living history with them of what it takes and what it has taken for America to be free and the sacrifices that have been made. So he continues to serve our country, and for this we thank you very much and are looking forward to your talk. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ted Tanner.
I hope you can follow me, and I hope you can hear it well. I'm not that shy about telling you my stories. I want to let you in on some of my little secrets. I have an interesting background. Born in Portland, Oregon, in 1920. My mother was a practicing dentist and waited till she was almost too late to have babies. I was the firstborn, and 26 months later, my sister was born. Both of us were cesarean, and I remember the hospital where my sister was born, and I remember being there to see my little sister, but I was much more enchanted with the hallways in this marble building that were waxed and I could slide. So I remember it well at 26 months. My mother being the dentist, and in the Depression, nobody had any money. Gasoline was 4 cents, 5 cents, and they would beg you to come to their station and give you a set of glasses. Bread was 5, milk was 4.5, 5 cents. So it was a tough time. My daddy, born in Sparta, Greece, oldest of 6 children, and being the eldest, tending the goats up on the hill, they sent him to Athens, put him on a boat, sent him to New York, where you had to be sponsored to even get in the country. Well, his uncles had restaurants. What else? So he was a happy, speak-breaking, new American citizen, learned to wash dishes, and finally became a citizen of our country. So that a little bit of my background with my mother and my daddy. Mother didn't want to really be married, but she wanted the 2 children. So they fought my whole life over everything. So I'm lucky to have survived. Times were tough. I had to scrounge for my own. I had a mechanical feeling and a background of machinery. And to keep me out of trouble, my mother provided a friend of hers to give me a job during the summers in the machine shop. He owned it. I learned to weld. I learned to run the machinery. I was more than just a scrounger at that time. I began to make things and do things capable of a machine work. So that filled in my background, and December 7th came along, and I remember the little tabletop radio Philco, and the president saying the Day of Infamy had joined us. I was immediately ready with all the friends I knew. Nobody wanted to just run away or get to a foreign country and escape what was in the draft. I tried to get in the Navy. They wanted 2 years of college. Finally, the Air Force is admitted. Come back, see us in a month, take our 2 weeks of training, take the testing. If you pass, we'll give you the equivalent of the 2 years. I had a good high school education in Portland, had no trouble passing all their testing, and became a sworn-in aviation cadet. Never sat in an airplane, never even ridden in one or been near one, never touched them. No money for that. Well, I had my little car, and I had enough money to buy gas. The West Coast was blanked out. You could not fly private airplane, Oregon, Washington, California. So I drove to Idaho and found a little airfield, paid a guy $5 for a ride. I got in, first time I'd ever been in a little light aircraft of any kind. He took it around the pattern, turned it loose to me, and said, "Fly if you like." And big as mechanical as I was, I had no fear of the thing at all. I realized I could control it. We came back and landed, and I went home happy that I had made a decision and became an aviation cadet. 9 months went by, no papers, no orders. What happened? Well, we didn't have any airplanes. We had no pilots. We didn't have any place to teach. Finally, orders came. Oh, here's Hollywood coming. I'll be able to dance at the canteen. Welcome to Tennessee. Lose your nice civilian clothes. Take tests. Learn to do kitchen police. Clean your bathroom with a toothbrush. This is literally trying to break you out of civilian mold. Fine and dandy. I finally got enough testing, and they okayed me to be a pilot. Now, mind you, I'd only had this one ride, so that's all I knew. But I wasn't afraid of it, and that's part of being able to handle whatever comes your way. I show you this P-40, which was the flying tiger of the day in China. It was all we had as a fighter. We gave them away to the Brits, to Russia, if you can believe that. At the time, they were our friend, quote, and they loved them. Well, in advanced training with this thing called a P-40, before I graduated and got my wings and the second lieutenant bar, I was invited to fly this thing. Now, I'll give you a little background. We had no two-seater. You were alone in this thing by yourself. The only way they could halfway train you was let you sit in the cockpit and study everything. Then they blindfolded you. Where's the flap handle? Where's the altimeter? Where's the gas gauge? And when you're ready and they're happy with you, take the runway. I never forgot that takeoff. The airplane was for 5 minutes ahead of me. I flew straight and level and bring the flaps up. Retract the landing gear. Go fly. Hey, it's just another good airplane. I was not as scared of it at all, and I had 10 hours in this thing before I ever advanced to fighter training. But I was airborne and happy about it and graduated with class of 43 June. Sent to fighter school, Sarasota, Florida. Sarasota was a famous place for the Ringling Brothers and Circus was there for their winter, and the baseball team was there. So it's a happy little town, and I went through fighter school there, learning to shoot the little guns in the wing of the P-40. 2 weeks later, there's meetings. Hey, we don't need any more fighters. We got too many, but we sure do need bomber pilots. Oh, God. How did I get stuck? Well, we'll take a volunteer. Anybody want to volunteer? Well, the axiom in the service is shut your mouth. I gambled. I took a chance. They wouldn't tell you. They knew, but they wouldn't tell you. I'm on the DC-3 American Airlines. By the way, there's one in Lions Museum, if you want to see one, which was nothing more than the old DC-3 and C-47 of World War II. We landed from Sarasota, Tampa, and on to Salinas, California, full of pilots, young pilots like myself, going to join something. I joined an outfit that had been training a whole year in California. They were flying P-40s, and they were practicing dive bombing with them. 2 weeks later, we're in San Francisco, and we're leaving on a Dutch luxury liner that got out of away from Hitler, and here's what we were after. 19 days on the water with 8,000 troops aboard, and all of us trying to stay alive with no help from our Navy. They didn't have any help to give. We didn't have enough ships. We didn't have enough protection. We zigzagged all the way across the ocean, got low on fuel, put in New Zealand for a day to put enough oil back in to get us to Australia. Land in Australia, unload, mud, rain, dirt, more shots, Ativan pills, supposedly to help ward off malaria. Turned you yellow. Yellow as a lemon. You could tell anybody that had been on them. So you couldn't hide. The airplanes were unloaded. We put them together. There's the Dux luxury liner. 8,000 of us aboard this thing. If you can imagine, it was a great old ship for its day, but it was overloaded. Anyway, the airplanes came, we put them together, P-40s, made them flyable, and in a few days we took off going north, landed up in that back country of sheep, desert, put fuel in them. Coral Sea is north. Head north. Cross the Coral Sea, here comes New Guinea. I'd never heard the word before. Thank you very much. The Japanese are all over the place, and we're trying to take it back. MacArthur has left the Philippines, got caught in a place called Corregidor. They snuck him out and got him back down to Australia to try to run the war. Well, my first little spot was in the middle of this place on the north part of the Owen Stanley Range, which was the big mountain range down the middle of New Guinea. And sure enough, rain, mud, dirt, plunk your airplane down and hope like hell you can not get wet. Well, I jumped off the wing into a ankle-deep mud water. Rain like crazy. Couldn't move the airplane. You had to tow it. We had to tie trucks on with chains to get it up onto the dry land where we had the makeshift of an airfield. So welcome to the war. Japanese airplanes were all around. An outfit that had been there a few months before us called the 49th Fighter Group. That's me on the left of the picture, the shorter guy. The big, tall kid on the right was the gunner I was assigned if and when I needed to take one. He didn't always go with us because there was no use to jeopardize another life if you didn't need to be defended with the 50 calibers on his my airplane with him in it. They didn't work if he wasn't there, but I had nose guns to fire into straight ahead from my pilot's area. Anyway, nothing to shoot at. Hey, we're going to get new airplanes. Well, why? Well, they need low-level stafing and bombing. We're going to get what's called an A-20, built in Long Beach, used all over Europe. The Russians loved them. Brits loved them. Single pilot, fast, outrun a Japanese airplane by 50, 75 miles an hour. So, low level, treetop, go like heck, carry bombs, and we perfected what were called parafrags, parachute bombs that we could put in the little bomb bay. By the way, that's a deluxe, absolutely the top flight of living in New Guinea. That was what we lived in after you got them. By the way, the only way you got them that well was you had to go to have a Fat Cat airplane, go to Australia, buy liquor, come home with the liquor, trade the Seabees for lumber to put a floor in your tent. That's how they got this good. Mosquitoes, big as dollars. Hungry. We had a net over your bed, an ordinary Ami jar with a air mattress. You rigged this mosquito net up over the top of this thing, and you crawled in at night with a flashlight and looked for a mosquito. If one got in with you, you got him. If your elbow rubbed aside at night asleep, he got you. So you got malaria. Everybody got it. So learn to live with bully beef, poor food, a little booze when you're lucky. I never was a smoker and I never was a gambler, but I saw many, many good friends lose every dime every month. There were good gamblers in the bunch that went home rich. Not me. I love photography. When I got there weren't any real pictures, but there was camera in the airplane, the A-20. It's behind the engine. Well, does it work? We don't even want to try. It's so shaky and so dirty back there, I don't even want to take it out. Give me the camera. I went home, my little tent, figured out the camera was a K20 roll film camera at the time that you could hand take pictures with, or it had a motor if you plugged it into the airplane. I made a mounting. It went in the belly of the A-20, pointing rearward, and it would run till the film ran out. So some of these pictures are taken from my airplane and my mount, and you can see how much detail you can see down below. See the revetment? That's how we hid the airplane, so if the Japanese came bombing or strafing, they could get one or two, but never all. It was stupid to park them side by side. We already did that in Hawaii. Anyway, I flew this thing, loved the airplane, got along with it, saw guys killed in it. Sometimes not the most fun to have to come home and tell the interrogator what you'd seen, what had happened, and what part you had in it. Lost good friends that way. How's the time going? We have problems? This was a Veterans Day, #1 for the 312 Bomb Group, symbolizing the people we had lost in combat. Mind you, everything can go well until statistics catch up with you, and sure enough, we had lost 70-some people by the time I'm there a few months. So we had a ceremony. In order to keep us from being too stir-crazy, they would send us to Australia every 4 months or so and put you there in a nice atmosphere. The Aussies were great to see us, especially the women. We spent money on them, took them to dinner, opened the car door, and danced with them. And they all wanted to bring you a new idea of going to America and getting babies and getting married. Not ready for that. Not yet. But anyway, Japanese airplanes. Here's what we did with them to get them out of our way so we could build a better runway. Take a bulldozer and pile the aluminum up. a lot of good aluminum there. By the way, the Japanese had been here before the war, made deals with our aircraft companies and the engine manufacturers. I looked in the nose of a captured Zero. There's a Pratt Whitney engine in it. They had bought the right to build it in Japan before the war. So typical of that time of period, they were great for copying. Why start from scratch if you can start with a perfected item, make it a little better and copy it and go on from there? That's what they did. I lifted the hoods on the old cars I'd worked on at home. Lifted a truck engine hood. There's a Chevrolet 6. It's a dead copy of an old Chevy inline 6-cylinder. Well, that was their truck. So here's some of the area that they wanted. Rubber, oil, all kinds of natural resources that the Japs needed badly for their peoples. So that's why they were out down there scrounging for all this. These are oil wells. We were depriving them. It was quite a thing to chase down and destroy what they wanted and try to not kill it so that you couldn't capture it later. So in doing this, it was a fine line to where you shot things up, but you didn't want to just destroy it so badly that you didn't have anything left. And we weren't there really to kill civilians or people. Japanese people shooting at us, we shot back. That's part of the war. It was an interesting time for a kid my old age. Here's a set of pictures that came from my camera mount. They were used all over the world. By the way, this top one here, that black thing in top, that's a shell going off trying to hit you, full of shrapnel. There's a series of 4 of them because this camera is click, click, click. This picture was not seen by any American till we got home, developed a film, found out what happened to that airplane. They used the pictures at home to sell war bonds. Bring money, we need it. We need to build more airplanes. Very interesting. Death of an A-20. Railroads from New Guinea, we went north and got into the Philippine Islands. And this is chasing railroads that were in the Philippines, and the Japanese had stuff stacked out, hidden. We went after it, set it afire, tore it up, whatever needed, to prevent them from having any way of surviving comfortably. It was a fun time flying. Now, mind you, they shoot, and they shoot at you, but we're doing maybe 350 to 370 miles an hour, so they didn't have much time to hit you, but we're low and fast and gone, and we could drop that little bomb. By the way, dropping a bomb at that speed has to be delayed. You can't drop it when it hits the ground and went off. It would blow you up. So we had to diffuse on it that would delay the action of exploding 8 to 11 seconds or 4 to 5. You could set the fuse either way. Now, mind you, that's a little propeller on the nose of the bomb. When it's released and ready to fire, the little propeller turned. When it turned enough time, a delay was there, and it exploded. Mind you, it was hitting the ground and porpoising behind you. I have pictures, I hope you'll see them, a bomb blasting down the runway, Japanese airfield, dirt. We would blow up these bombs, 500-pounders. It would make a crater half as big as this room. It would fill with water. And before they could fill it up and fly off of it, we came back and made some new ones. We stopped them. Here's the little second lieutenant visiting Australia, forgetting there was a war, trying to have a little fun. Dance, go to dinner, eat good, nice quiet time until you had to go back to Mosquitoeville. I know there's so many good stories I'd love to tell you. Here's some of the oil fields. Things that you'd like to forget, the death of friends, things that happened from moving, aircraft accidents, weather. One Black Sunday, a front came through that was a barn burner, which you would remember rest of your life if you were in it. I happened to be on the ground that day, and my outfit, some of them were flying. I was home writing letters, and 6-7 hours before, and they're out of fuel, landing in the water, crashing, trying to get home. And a few finally wiggled their way around to the storm and got back to our runway. The commanding officer of our group, a West Pointer, tired, half lost, landed the airplane about as high as this building and drove the wheels right up through the wings. And wings broke, hit the ground. He walked out of it, and of course, that's just another war casualty. We'll order a new one. If you can walk away, especially if you have rank, you didn't even have to answer what happened. That's the way the war went. This thing is called a B-32. Consolidated aircraft that made the B-24, the bombers of Europe, built this 4-engine thing and got it sold to the government. They took orders, delivered the airplanes, and the war is winding down. My one little squadron, the 386 bomb squadron of the 312 bomb group, were asked to fly these things. I'm ready to come home. I've done my missions. I don't need to learn to fly this thing. And a lot of my friends who stayed over flew this thing, typical of a brand new outfit, overheating, engine failures, all kinds of trouble. The last guy killed over Japan in one of these things was taking pictures over Japan, and the Japanese pilots on the ground wouldn't listen to their leaders. They wanted to finish the thing. They came up, shot these things down. A tail gunner in the back with broomsticks sticking out to simulate guns was killed by a Japanese Zero. By the way, they solved that. They took the props off all the Jap fighters on Japan. You can't fly if you don't have a propeller. I came home 72 missions and got lucky and got to Long Beach and got to learn to fly this P-80. It was our first jet, and in order to check us out in it, we were all good pilots, but we'd never even seen or handled a jet. Well, it was a matter of sitting you in it, teaching you how to start it, and there's the desert. You had miles of place to land. I had no trouble. It was a fun airplane. Flew it up over, that's Baldy. Take off, a few minutes, you're over Long Beach. The Navy was at Los Alamitos. They were up flying, and we would get into dogfights over Long Beach. Nobody knew who was where. In those days, we didn't have what was called a transponder, so there was no tattletale of who was where. One of the guys I flew with got tangled up with one of the Navy boys, turned and wiggled and had fun, and his fire went out. The P-80 had a notion for doing this, and you had a rigmarole to try to restart. He never got it going again, but he's up over Long Beach Airport, typical there of Lakewood Boulevard. Came around, couldn't get the gear down, couldn't get the flaps down, no power. Went down the runway, couldn't land. Up over the telephone poles at Lakewood and put it in the bean field out there, made a nice wheels up landing, and damned if his picture isn't in the paper, saved the airplane. Nobody knew why. We all knew. Well, this was typical of the way we flew and delivering airplanes. And if I'm not overdoing my stay here, I could tell you more stories of what happened to me on some of the ferry trips that I took out of Long Beach and out of other areas of the United States flying. So, what's the time, gentlemen? Are we tired of listening? I hope I'm keeping you on the edge of your seat a little. I'll tell you a true story of me picking up one of these brand new parked airplanes, the P-80 fighter. Now, they didn't have the version of 2 to the airplane. They made that later, but the original P-80 was just a single pilot. I got one in Virginia that had been parked. Got it off the ground, came west. I'm to deliver it to Riverside, to the main municipal airport at Riverside. Well, I get to El Paso for fuel. Everything's going well. I load up in the middle of the day, hot, and in those days we had what was called a throat mic. It was a little place that went around your neck with 2 little buttons that were the part that picked up the sound from your throat. They burned like hell. They would burn the skin enough that you were sore with that throat mic. Well, most of us that wore it, we would take it off and hang it up and only use it when we had to. Well, I get in the middle of takeoff. I got clearance to run the big long runway, El Paso, full of fuel, hot. tip tanks on the end of the wings. I'd never even flown them before, but they put them on to get me clear to Riverside. Well, I flipped a little door on the side of my toe to let in what was called fresh air. I'm no more than 100 feet off the ground and nothing but fuel. Jet fuel fumed into the airplane, into my glasses, into the inside of the, I can't see, my eyes are burning. Luckily, I had the thing trimmed enough that I blinked and winked and looked sideways and kept it airborne, threw my glasses off, came around, managed to call the tower and get clearance for landing. I turned on final, and this sucker scared me. Any of you fly, you know what a stall feels like. The airplane starts to shudder and fall. And if you're really quick, you really know what happened. I dropped the nose and turned more gently, lined up, put it on the runway, taxied into the parking area, tried to get somebody to come out and help fix this thing. They wouldn't come near me. Nobody had ever been to school on this new airplane. No tech sergeant, nobody wanted to go near me and even looked. Well, I had a date in Long Beach. And viva la femme. I wanted to get home. I got a screwdriver, borrowed, a pair of pliers, started opening it up myself. I'm nothing but a little lowly captain now. I tightened every rubber hose band, just like your radiator hose. I must have tightened 100 of them. They were all loose. What had happened from the thing sitting, parked that long, the rubber had given up a little, the hose clamp was loose. It let fuel somehow get where it didn't belong and blew into me. I fired the engine up. Everybody's happy. I couldn't find a leak. Nobody would even look. I closed it up, cleared. I'm the pilot. I want to get to Long Beach in my date. Took me longer to turn the corner, go north out of El Paso. There's Phoenix ahead. I'll cut off, turn left. I'm at 30,000 on oxygen, and in no time I'm on the final to land at the municipal airport, turn in the airplane. Took me longer to get from Long Beach from Riverside back to Long Beach than it took me to get from El Paso. But I at least got home finally and kept my date. Never underestimate a fighter pilot. If there's a way, a crazy American boy will figure out a way, especially if there's a cute pair of ankles. I have some map here that I take to the schools. These students that I have spoken with have signed this. It's becoming rather beat. It's signed all over. Any of you interested, come and look. Come and sign if you wish. Anyway, I hope I've entertained a little. I hope you've enjoyed me. I guarantee you I have enjoyed being here.
So in Laguna Niguel, we come together as a community to honor our veterans and to give thanks to them. You saw earlier the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts here, and not only are they are here to participate in the ceremony, but also for us to teach them how do we celebrate our country, and how do we learn patriotism, and how do we honor our veterans. Also, we've had members of the Laguna Niguel Women's Club assisting with the registration. And now, as a very special part of our Veterans Day ceremony, is where the Girl Scouts and Brownies will be delivering handmade cards to all of our veterans. We have handmade cards from Junior's Girl Scout Troop 4497, Brownie Troop 8590, and Cub Scout Pack 705. So to assist with the recognition of all our veterans is Mayor Pro Tem Lori Davies. As I mentioned before, Lori is also co-chair of the Military Support Committee. So it is our honor to do this. When your name is called, please stand if you're able. If not, please raise your hands, and one of the Brownies will come and give you your card.
We're going to start with the VIP of the day, and that is Ted Tanner. You want to come over here? Army Air Corps, World War II.
Okay, next we have Shirley Abrams. Shirley was in the Coast Guard in World War II.
Frank McGrath, who is also part of our military support, and he's in submarine service, Navy.
Okay, Steve Tucker, who was a Marines in Vietnam, 1966 to 1970.
We have Richard C. Stirrup, Navy, 1958 to 1962.
Okay, next we have someone who you all know, and I hope he's in the room because we do want to recognize him. We have Jack Songer. All of you know him as Sergeant Songer, was in the Marines. 1983 to 1987 during the Cold War, and he was part of President Reagan's Guard. Thank you, Jack.
We have Bartow McLeod, Army, and that's 65 to 71 retired.
Okay, Larry Jeromet was in the Marines from 1970 to 1974. Thank you.
John Scott Williams, Army. We've got 1966 to 69.
James Smith, Army, 1957.
Ed Ransdale, Navy, 66 to 69.
John Sheets in the Air Force during Vietnam.
Dick Gladden, Army, 51 to 53.
Tony Guzetta in the Army during Korean War.
David Bishop, Army, Vietnam War, 66 to 68.
Frank Owen in the Army, 1963 to 1965.
Dan Grodzinski, Army, 1960 to 1966.
Ken Benson in the Army, 1962 to 1965.
Don Mertens, Army, Vietnam, February 1966 to 69.
Mike Garnreiter in the Marines, 1974.
David V. Malili, Air Force, Korean War, 52 to 54.
Dennis Mulvaney in the Air Force during Korea, 1954.
Dave Tuma, Air Force, 1980 to 84.
John Ulrich, Air Force, during Vietnam, 1966 to 1970.
Maynard Rains, Army, Vietnam, 73 to 97.
Brian Rees, Navy, 1966 to 1972.
James Herrera, Marines, 1983 to 2018.
John Humphrey in the Army during the Cold War, 1968 to 71 and 74 to 88.
Bill Lieber, Army, Vietnam, 73 to 76.
Haig Toshin in the Air Force, 1941 to 1945.
Will Stanley, Navy, World War II, 42 to 46.
Rich Encinas, Navy, 84 to 89.
Jim Van Schack, Army, World War II, 46 to 48.
Dwight Moodry in the Army, 1964 to 1970.
Jesus Pascual, Air Force, Vietnam, 64 to 68.
John Pointer in the Army, 1970 to 2000.
Daniel Vincent Rewall, Marines, and currently serving. Thank you.
Ferris Faddle in the Air Force during Vietnam. Served the Air Force for 20 years.
John Wilson, Air Force, Vietnam, 72 to 79.
Curtis Lee, Army, 1969.
Bruce Birkeland, Air Force, Vietnam, 69 to 72.
Jeff White, Navy, 95 to 2006.
Jose David Pascual, Navy.
Bill Sundin, Air Force, during Vietnam, 1969 to 1971.
Bob Barabee, Air Force, Vietnam, 67-71.
Eugene Danny Lucia, Air Force, during Vietnam, 65 to 69.
Robert Cook, Navy, Vietnam, 68 to 73.
Manuel Alegre, during Vietnam, Navy, 1955 to 1975. Okay. And are there any veterans who may have arrived late who did not fill out a card we'd like to recognize? Assemblyman Bill Bro.
86 to 90 and a little bit of 91.
Okay, Army, 86 to 1990. Thank you for your service. Hey, anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you so much to all of our veterans and all of our currently serving active duty military. Thank you for being here. It takes a community to put this on, and we would like to, we recognize that our veterans really protected a way of life and many of the traditions that we have. So I'd like to ask all of the scouts to come forward, because we are going to all together participate in a great American tradition. Are all the scouts up here? Katie, do you want to come up? And that tradition is, move down. And adults, you're going to participate as well, because that tradition is singing happy birthday. And somebody, scouts, please move all the way down. Don't cover the table. Because somebody's having a birthday in a couple of weeks. That certain somebody is our guest speaker. So, but Ted, would you like to tell us what birthday this will be?
I'll be 99.
99. So we are going to start the celebration early. And Laguna Niguel is going to sing happy birthday to Ted Tanner for his 99th birthday.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for speaking. It's been quite an honor for our veterans. And I just want to thank all of our veterans for your service and for protecting our lives. And yeah, here we go on your birthday. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ted. Happy birthday to you.
Okay. So, Ted, would you like to blow out the candles? If we could have the scouts who rolled in the cake roll it over by Ted so he can blow out the candles. Okay, now for our young ladies and gentlemen here, I want you to know that this is a very special opportunity to sing happy birthday to somebody for their 99th birthday, and also to sing happy birthday to one of our very honored veterans. Yes, go. Yay! Okay, well, thank you, Ted. Thank you for sharing Veterans Day with us, and thank you for allowing us to celebrate your birthday a couple weeks early. Okay. Yes. And today, as you know, is all about community, whether it be our local community or our country's community, how we all work together. We have refreshments in the back. Please stay. Talk to all of our veterans today. Mingle, enjoy the fellowship, and God bless America.